I'm just gonna dive right into it. The Patek Philippe 5524G and R, the two watches we have in front of us, are by far the weirdest and most controversial Patek Philippe's ever released. And that actually might be a good thing. Welcome everyone. Today's episode I wanted to discuss a Patek Philippe, the 5524, and why I believe it is a very interesting watch and what makes it extremely controversial. And for someone who's considering a Patek Philippe 5711 because of the interesting story, I think you should direct your attention towards the 5524G or R. Allow me to explain. The 5524G is a pilot's watch. The reason why this is so interesting is Patek Philippe relies heavily on previous models. Every single watch they ever released, the Nautilus, Aquanaut, Calatrava, everything has a nod to something from the past. Well, if you look at Patek Philippe's past, there's no record of any pilot's watch. Now, if I've learned anything in this crazy hobby of ours, every time we say a brand has never done something, all of a sudden we're gonna find a one-off, a unique piece, maybe for a king, a pilot, we don't know. Usually, I'm just gonna say with a bit of reservation, there had never been a Patek Philippe pilot's watch. And even if there was, Patek Philippe scholars, collectors haven't discovered it yet. And even if they ever created a pilot's watch, it's probably just a piece unique for someone special. So Patek Philippe, as far as we know, have no history making a pilot's watch. And for a brand that relies pretty much on all of their historical pieces, when they released this pilot's watch, the 5524G, in 2015, people were very divided, especially Patek Philippe purists and people who just kind of like pilot's watches. The purists absolutely hated this release because, well, there had never been a pilot's watch. But, of course, other people who like pilot's watches, who wanted that step above IWC, for example, they like the watch. And personally, I'm part of the camp who likes the watch. I like the complication. I like the way it looks. I've been wearing it for quite some time, and I really enjoy it. Now, years later, the 5524 actually started to catch traction even with purists because they started to realize that it's actually a really good thing that Patek Philippe decided to create something new. If we keep looking to the past, and this is just my personal opinion, if we keep looking to the past for inspiration, which every single brand has been doing, we're never going to have any new innovation. We're never going to have any new collection. Keep in mind, 50 years from now, people will look back at the 5524 and say, yeah, Patek Philippe has history with pilot's watches. So there's nothing wrong with creating something new. In fact, in my opinion, we should celebrate that the fact a brand like Patek Philippe is creating something new and they don't mind, because other brands could look at Patek Philippe, especially that they're one of the top three, and say, hey, it's still okay for us to create something new and not keep going back to our past. Everybody's stuck with bringing back watches from the past. Look at Omega. They literally replicated the trilogy watches down to every single detail. It's cool, but now brands are starting to lack innovation, something new. That's why we like Grand Seiko so much, because they're one of the few brands that aren't just going back to the past. Not that they have a lot of models from the past, but they don't just keep going back to the past to reissue. They keep innovating, creating new designs. Some of them aren't to everybody's taste, but they're creating new stuff. Enter the 5524G. You have a phenomenal watch, a pilot's watch from a brand that has no history making pilot's watches. That is why it is the most controversial, or one of the most controversial Patek Philippe's ever made, and why it is a very interesting watch. Let's dial it back and talk about the watch itself. This is not going to be a full review. I have reviewed this watch in the past, so I'm going to put a link down below. But the 5524G is a 41mm pilot's watch. It has a dual time complication, and it, quite frankly, is extremely under the radar. You look at it, it does not look like a Patek Philippe. And that might be a positive or a negative for a lot of people. for me personally, I find it kind of refreshing. Something that is pretty new, something that is cool, and it's a little bit younger, so it appeals to me personally. But I find that this watch is actually quite popular at the moment with even some Patek Philippe purists. The 41mm case is great. The complication itself is great, but before we talk about the complication, let's just talk about the movement really quick. The movement powering this piece is the 324 SC. This is a good looking movement, high horology finishing. I do have a few comments about that, but it allows you to have a dual time function. If you look at the left side, you have two pushers. It has a quarter lock, you just have to unlock it, and then you can operate the dual time. If you look at the way the hand jumps, you're jumping the hour hand, and then there's a second skeletonized hand underneath it that could disappear if you're not using the dual time function, and that is pretty cool. It's executed perfectly, and something that my personal OCD is very happy about is when the hand goes on top of that skeletonized hand, it's synced perfectly. At least with the 3 examples that I've experienced within the past few months. Now, if you think that's cool, there's another extra thing that this movement allows Patek Philippe to do. If you look at the watch, you have the home and local time. You can set both time zones, but if you look underneath, there's 2 circles underneath the home and the local time. This is a day-night indicator, and personally, every time I travel, I realized how important the day-night indicator actually is, at least for me. Personally, when I'm tracking 2 time zones and I want to know if I could call a person, I want to know if it's nighttime or daytime, and I just want to have it at a quick glance. So with the 2 day-night indicators, obviously wherever you are in the local time might not be that important because you could look outside the window, but it's still kind of cool that you get in the local and the home time the day-night indicator. If I were to choose between the 5524R and the 5524G, the 5524R is the rose gold version, and the G is the white gold version. I'm going to give you my opinion which one you should choose if you're considering these watches. Let me start off with my bias. I do prefer the G, the white gold version. The blue dial, in my opinion, looks better. It has a grainy texture to it. It's a lot more casual, under the radar. And for me personally, it's a little bit younger, so I can actually wear it with a hoodie and not worry about it. It looks better in my personal opinion, and you could easily dress it up or dress it down. It's just a lot more versatile. Also, if we've learned anything, blue dials are more desirable, at least at the moment. Now, on the other hand, if you're someone who has a lot of meetings, who dresses up a lot, then I would consider the 5524R, because while it is rose gold, while it does have that very beautiful brown dial, you can actually kind of dress it down because of that dual time complication. Because it is a pilot's watch, it could be dressed down a little bit. I wouldn't dress it down with t-shirt and shorts, but you could wear it a little bit casually in my personal opinion. However, it does restrict you from not having the versatility of the 5524G. You have white metal, you have blue dial, you could wear it, and honestly, a lot of people won't even notice it's a Patek Philippe. If you're going somewhere where you're kind of worried about it, it draws less attention to it. Whereas the R, it is a pretty loud dress watch. Overall, I think the 5524 is a very cool watch. If you're considering a 5711, for example, obviously this isn't the greatest alternative because it doesn't have a bracelet and it is a little bit bigger than the 5711. But if you're looking for an interesting Patek Philippe, and you don't want to spend $150,000 on a 5711, I would consider the 5524G. It is a very cool watch. It has a very cool story behind it. And overall, I think it's a little bit more useful, and the quality, in my opinion, is a little bit better than the 5711. However, if you don't want that extreme luxury pilot's watch, if this is a little bit excessive for your taste, then go back to IWC in my opinion. If you're gonna buy a pilot's watch, you can't really beat IWC with their history, with their style, their quality. Just get a 41mm chronograph and you'll be equally as happy if you're just after a pilot's watch. Guys, thank you so much for joining me. This is just a quick little episode. I wanted to get in front of the camera and just off the cuff, raw, tell you my opinions on the 5524. I do have a few more episodes coming, so make sure you subscribe. The next episode, I'm going to be talking about my latest purchases. The first one being the 15450 Royal Oak, and the second one being a very special Grail watch that I purchased as well. We're going to talk about my collection, where I want to take it, and I hope to see you in that next video.